And I got Brandon Gentry. We're with the Good Old Gamers podcast.
Hey, you guys.
Hey. We was just wanting to pretty much get some words from you on the Retro VGS for one of our episodes.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. For our listeners that aren't familiar, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Mike Kennedy, and I am a lifelong gamer. I'm now, in my mid-40s, but started gaming, back in the 70s with the Pong system, and then the Atari, and then pretty much everything else in between, the Atari and the PS3 and the Wii today, which are the two most modern systems that I have still. Mm-hmm. I haven't bought anything newer than that yet. And frankly... Yeah, and I don't play those at all. I mean, I haven't had my PS3 turned on, I don't even think in a year or longer. And my Wii crapped out a while back and spitting out the discs. So I actually ended up getting rid of that not too long ago and selling it to somebody who just modded it, just to play it for the emulators and the downloadable, the digital games and stuff. Yeah. So, upstairs on our TV right now in our main living room, I got a Dreamcast hooked up and a GameCube hooked up. The PS3 is still hooked up, although it hasn't turned on in a long time. I had an Ouya up there, but it's pretty much a brick right now. And, what else do you need, man? You got the Dreamcast and a GameCube with the Game Boy player underneath it. I mean, that's all you need, right?
Yeah. When it comes to the more modern consoles, the Dreamcast is like my favorite of them.
Yeah, you can find every major game you need to play, like,
so many great
on the libraries.
There's so many great arcade ports for that system.
Yeah, no, it's great, and then down in the man cave, I got a 42-inch TV down here with about 10 other old consoles hooked up to it, and Apple IIc running in the background here, and a Genesis kiosk in the back running a little bit of Monster Boy, or Wonder Boy and Monster World.
Right on.
Nice.
And I pretty much, I'm not just in the business to make this console and do the magazine. I'm actually a hobbyist myself and trying to bring out really cool products for other people like me, bring out things that I want to buy, and that's where Retro Magazine kind of got started, and Game Gavel, which is my auction site, I started back in 2008. It's like eBay just for video games, and it's starting to come around a little bit now that the magazine's been taken off, and then we got the new console coming out. So that's pretty much that's the 1, 2, 3, the auction site, the console, and the magazine. That's all I got in me.
That's excellent. I really enjoy the magazine. I got into like the first few issues of it, and it's excellent. It's one of my
great.
Current favorite reads.
Did you get in at the beginning and get the first few issues?
I think we have issues 2, 3, and 4. I think. I don't think we have the very first one.
Yeah, one's hard to find. It's one for like anywhere from $50 to $100 on eBay right now.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, it's going good. I mean, we actually just got, I don't know if you guys have my video on, but here's issue, this is 8. This is the one that just went to the printers. It's all about Batman, Arkham Knight, and then we celebrate the history of superhero video games.
Nice.
There's a lot of fun stuff in here. Yeah, it's just been a ton of fun. It's been great. People seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah, that's a good thing too. Yeah. Like Retro's, it's picked up so much here recently. Just to local where we're at, just in the past like 3 months, people have just really started getting into it pretty heavily around here.
I wanted to ask you, what made you decide to do the Retro VGS now? Like, what caused you to go ahead and pull the trigger on this project?
Well, it was probably about 2 years ago, Steve Weta and Steve's my partner on this, and you guys may know Steve from early Atari days and Genesis days. He did Kid Chameleon and Sonic Spinball and Sonic 2, and worked on a lot of the Tengen NES games, and was involved in all of those lawsuits and stuff back then. And he still can't even talk. He says he can't talk about it even to this day, or, they'll come and get him. He's like, I can't talk about any of that stuff, I'm not going to say anything. But he and I were talking, again, probably two and a half years ago, about doing a new console. And at one point in time, I was thinking about doing a plug-and-play controller that would play on cartridges, but it would be like SD card cartridges that would plug into the controller, but they'd be, again, for new games. That were coming out. And a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of, there were retro games coming out on mobile. That's been a popular genre on mobile for a long time. And frankly, it sounded good at first, but those retro games are generally difficult to play on a touchscreen.
I abhor touchscreen. I refuse to play most games on the touchscreen now.
Yeah, it's pretty much a lost cause. And so, so Steve and I have been kind of kicking this around for a couple of years, and then it was at E3 last year where I was on the floor, and I'm kind of curious. I'm going this week, so I'm kind of curious to see kind of how it holds up. But last year, there was just tons of retro games on the floor. So Microsoft invited in the indie developers, and literally half of their booth space was taken up with the indie developers showing off their games, which was awesome. And 9 out of 10 of those indie games that they brought in were retro. You had Axiom Verge there, you had Nidhogg there. There was a ton of other ones, and then you got like Devolver Digital doing Broforce, which is going to be coming out here pretty soon. And you just got all of these, Hyperlight Drifter. The list goes on and on over the last 2 years, or year and a half, on all of these developers who kind of grew up with these classic games that now all either have their own studios or work at studios, or maybe they're just homebrew guys, doing it in their house or whatever. But they're making games that, kind of celebrate the games they grew up on. And lo and behold, they're still fun, and other people want to play them, and so they're able to sell them, and it's just great. So you get all of these retro games coming out now. It's when I saw that Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo as well as a big, at Indiecade, they had a whole tent just full of indie retro games. Yeah. And so they're all taking it super seriously. Like, this is a genre now, and it's an art form, as I've said. And I think because of the fact that it's an art form and now it's this kind of growing genre, and people are discovering that these games are just as much fun as a lot of these AAA games that are coming out, if not more fun. And I just don't think it's ever going to go away. So when I was at E3 last year, that's when I thought, okay, now's the time to get serious about this and bring out a console that is like the best, that will deliver the best experience to play a retro game in today's age. In high def with a wired controller, so you don't have any lag time. There's no system updates. There's no internet connection. There's nothing. And, we've been met with a lot of, some criticism on that side, like, why wouldn't, you got to be able to update games get out and they don't work. I'm just thinking, God, I've been playing games for 30, 40 years. I personally never had an issue with a cartridge game not working. That needed to be updated or patched. And if it did, it was called an Easter egg, right? Or some, hidden bug in it, but it was kind of cool. And so and it's like people are just spoiled these days. It's like, I can put out a game, it doesn't work, I can patch it and fix it. But, you get these consumers out there, spending 50, 60, 70 bucks on a game and then bringing it home, and then the thing bricks and doesn't work, and then you got to get an update. And, even before you get an update, you got to update your system. You're sitting there for 2 or 3 hours before you even play the damn game. It's just sort of ridiculous. And so at least for retro gamers, maybe we can create a system that kind of takes gamers back to the simpler times, and you just pop a cartridge in, you turn it on, you get your friends together, and you play the game. It's going to work out of the box. It'll have a box. It'll have an instruction book. Just back to the simple days, but super fun games. And we're creating a system that's pretty next generation. This thing, what we're ultimately going to have under the hood of this thing is about as next generation as you're going to get for a cartridge-based system. It's not going to be cheap. It's not a toy. This isn't a made in China, retro knockoff system of some sort. This is like going to be, the real deal. I mean, this thing has got, it's not going to be cheap. But what we hope to deliver is a system that'll last people 20, 30, 40 years, last a lifetime, just like Atari has lasted mine, or Nintendo NESs and Super NESs have lasted the lifetime of its players, of which I was also one. And, you can still plug those systems in today and they work.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to deliver and really tell people, I mean, this thing's going to last a long time. You can get into gaming, you can get out of gaming, go to school, get a job, get back into gaming when you get a disposable income, like a lot of us older gamers nowadays, just buying everything that we can, to collect and put on our walls or whatever. And, we just want to bring all of that back, for kind of this generation of gamers and older gamers that still want to play these games on a true, on a real video game system, for God's sake. I mean, this to me is going to be like the only real video game system on the market, because, it doesn't do anything else. It's not made to do anything else.
Right.
It's just made to play retro style games on cartridges, on your television, in your family room, with your family and friends.
Yeah, I've noticed that the recent trend of more modern, the current generation systems, they're almost becoming just thumbed down computers, both in price and in function. I'd rather just have a PC.
They got no soul, man. They're just piece of, it's just an electronic box anymore. I mean, to me, they look commercial. They're boring. They don't excite me at all. And I don't know if it's just because I'm older or it's just because I think the games just aren't very good. They're not compelling to me anymore. I mean, great graphics can only take you so far.
Right? Yeah.
That's
and kids these days don't give a shit about graphics. Honestly, they've all had great graphics for a lot of these kids as long as they've been alive. What they think is cool are these retro graphics, because in my mind, you play a game like Shovel Knight versus like a game of Call of Duty, and Shovel Knight to me looks like, wow, it looks like a video game. Look, all these, it doesn't look like real life. It looks like a freaking video game.
Yeah.
Video games are supposed to look like video games, not real life. At least in my mind, right?
That's how I feel.
Pixels are video games. Pixels and sprites are video games to me. And I just think that look, it just doesn't get old. And now it's even cooler looking. I mean, people are loving these retro games that are coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly most every indie game you see come out now is like the updated pixelated graphics and all that. And I'm not complaining a bit, because I'd still much rather break out the old stuff any day of the week. I bought an Atari 400 about a month ago, I guess, and I've played it more than I do my Xbox One, pretty much.
Yeah. I know a lot of parents, guys my age who have kids, and they've told me that their kids enjoy, would rather pull out Dad's old Super NES than sit there and play half of the games that are coming out these days.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we want to tap into. I mean, just bring back a true, real deal video game system to play video games of all things. How about that?
Yeah.
One question I had, just, since we're actually talking to somebody that's making a console, how exactly hard is it to come up, design, and do everything? I know it's a pain in the ass, more likely.
Well, we're not done yet. That's, and I can't really say it's a pain in the ass. I mean, I'm not a hardware or a software guy, okay? I'm just sort of the crazy guy that had the idea and the contacts and kind of, the infrastructure to do something like this. So it's been fascinating for me to work with Steve and John, my two hardware guys, and guys that have been in the industry for years and years and years, hearing all of the stories that they tell about the early days at Atari or Apple or Sega, and they're up in the Bay. Well, one's in Palm Springs. I'm in the LA Orange County area, and then Steve's up in the Bay Area, up in San Francisco, about 8 hours north. But every Monday we have it's probably a 6 to 8 hour phone call, just going over nothing but hardware, having hardware discussions. And we're probably going on, I don't know, 6 to 8 months right now. So it really hasn't been that long in the scheme of a product, in a product development life cycle. I mean, we're gonna release this console in lightning speed compared to like if Sony or Microsoft, released a system. Maybe they take a couple of years before they get to the point where, and we're trying to be really transparent about it and kind of share as much as we can with everybody over on our Facebook page. We may be coming off too transparent, but it's just fun. I mean, I think people are getting vested in it. They're criticizing stuff that we're talking about, or they're praising stuff that we're talking about, and we're trying to just take it all in. And we know we're never going to please everybody, especially gamers. We're a hard bunch.
Oh yeah,
as you guys know. I mean, there's just gamers that just bitch about everything, and it's just like we know we can't please everybody, but we're trying to put out a system. I mean, it sounds cliche, but that we want to buy.
Yeah.
Steve wants to make games for it, just like we used to just get up and make games for the Genesis. He wants to start making games for this thing, just in that same way. And so it's we're trying to create a love letter to every cartridge-based console that came before it, and we want it to kind of have its own kind of unique identity. And I think certainly it will. Because you can't compare it to anything else that's out today or anything that's been released, frankly, in the last 20-some years, or whatever. When the N64, which was the last cartridge-based system to come out, now you've had the Retron come out, and some other systems that emulate and or play old cartridges or whatever, but
nothing on its own.
Yeah.
Nothing on its own to play new games, That's really what separates us. That's kind of what's kind of surprised everybody. It's like, wow, this is like a video game system that's to play new games on cartridges. And that's what we've got. And one of the biggest questions that we get is who the hell's what developers are going to make games for this thing? I mean, you see it all over the forums. I mean, IGN posted a story on us, and it got, everybody's like, that's the dumbest idea. Nobody's going to want to make games for this. We've had close to 200 developers right now reach out to us.
Oh, that's excellent.
Of various levels, because nobody's making money these days.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a select few that are, but, 90-some percent, probably 99% of all the developers out there, they can't, it's just gotten too big. Mobile's too big. There's 150,000 games a year that come out.
Yeah.
How do you compete with that? Well, hey, we're not going to have 1 million users. Well, we don't think, but hey, if we have 10, 20, 30,000, 50,000 to 100,000 maybe in the first year, that's a nice little niche, considering that developers can make a game for the system, put it on there, let us make the cartridge for them, sell this game for 30, 40, 50 bucks, depending on the size and scope and whether it's a license people know or don't know or whatever. But maybe they're going to make maybe $10 to $20 royalty per game. So instead of this free to play crap and all these other, money making scheme games that really think about the money, they think about the monetization before they think of the gameplay type stuff, which is like everything that's out there. I think it's going to be a great market for the indie developers and the higher level homebrew developers, where I think they'll actually be able to make some money and create a franchise, for themselves that they can build on and bring out on our system over the years. I just think it's going to be just unbelievably exciting to see. Just the games that the developers have reached out to us already, showing us what games they've got, and it's going to be crazy. I'm telling you, we're going to have, I think between like when the Kickstarter starts and when we actually deliver the product like a year later, in that year's time, I think there's going to be an amazing amount of games available for this thing at launch. I mean, we've got kind of this year runway, to get games out for them. And again, developers are just, literally falling over backwards trying to figure out, what do we need to know? We want to start making games for this now. We want to have a launch title for you guys. I mean, it's going crazy now. We're hoping that this excitement will spill over to some of the bigger developers and publishers. And we do have contacts, with all of them. Good, solid, real contacts, not just like email kind of thing.
Yeah.
We all, we've got great connections in the industry. And so I think a lot of it's going to be in the gamers' hands, and we need to show developers that there's a market here for these types of games, and we want them on cartridges. And I know I'm not giving you guys much time to talk.
It's okay, man.
But most of these retro games that come out these days, the Shovel Knights and all these other ones, they're all digital. They're not. Retro City Rampage had a disc version for the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And Brian sold out. They sold out of those like instantly, because people just wanted wanted Retro City Rampage on like a tangible piece of medium. Well, I mean, imagine if we brought that out on a cartridge. People go nuts.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and we just did an interview with Nathaniel Weiss. He's developing
I was just looking at that game.
Yeah, he hadn't heard of the Retro VGS yet. We told him about it, and he said,
I want to get in touch with him.
Yeah, putting it on a cart was a dream of his. Like, it's not just the monetization of it. It's having a cartridge.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
That's what they all say.
That's one of
the developers. I mean, they've told me they'd never thought that they'd ever have an opportunity putting their game on a cartridge. Now you got the whole guys that are putting them out, still making NES cartridges or SNES or Genesis cartridges or whatever. But and that's great. I mean, I think that's awesome. And what we hope to do is the same guy that makes an NES game or a Super NES game or Genesis game, because of our FPGA system, we bring their game right onto ours without any additional work on their end. They just give us the game code. We combine it with that game's core. And when we put that cartridge in our system, the FPGA gets a signal from the cartridge which says, "Hey, you need to act like a Genesis for this game." And so it's great. So it just gives these homebrew guys or people that are making these great. I mean, you got Watermelon who did Pure Solar, originally on the Genesis. So they could literally just give us the same game, and maybe we can take it to thousands of more people that just don't have a Genesis or didn't even know you could buy new Genesis games today, other than, all of us hobbyists know that. But what about Joe Consumer out there who just wants to say, "Oh, wow, look, there's Pure Solar. I've never heard of this game before. Wow, this is an awesome game." So I think we can bring it to, we were hoping a bigger mass market for these homebrewers and indie developers. And maybe more on the homebrew side, I guess, for that, because indies may be used to getting, their mobile games and stuff out. But just because there's millions of iPhone users, it doesn't mean your game's going to get, you're not going to sell 1 million copies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, we just released a game, Chicken Shift, which was kind of a remake of an old Bally Senti arcade game called Chicken Shift, and we're just releasing it onto iTunes right now. And frankly, I don't know how I'm even going to market it. And I got a pretty big network, and I don't even know if we'll be able to sell enough to make it pay for itself. And it was a pretty inexpensive game to make. So, I just can imagine, just somebody that doesn't have the connections or the money to promote and market their game. I mean, no matter how great a game it is, it's very hard to get the word out. It's just like, back in the 80s when you had the oversaturation, you had everybody and their mom making a game, just trying to make a fast buck, and then the games turned to crap, and then people just quit buying the games. I mean, I've honestly almost just quit buying mobile games.
Yeah.
I haven't bought a game. I can't remember the last time. Because I just have no interest. The games I do have, I don't even play.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Yeah.
They're just sort of throwaway, in my mind. And the sad part about it is there's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears poured into a lot of these, really good retro games over the years on mobile, and people just forgot about them. I mean, think about all the games from, 5, 6, 7 years ago when the iPhone just came out that were like great retro games, like the Super Mega Worms and stuff like that, where, hey, if we could bring some of those, that's the other thing I want to do is like identify some of these really great games from like the past 5 or 6 years on mobile that, would play just much better with a proper controller, and bring them back on a cartridge, and make it easy for those developers just to retool it and remonetize that product for us. And I think, so far, I mean, every single one that we've talked with is like, how do I do it? Definitely want to do it. Why wouldn't I do it? So I think we'll be able to really kind of pick the cream of the crop and just really get some great games on it, whether they're, remakes or ports of mobile games that, you love, but maybe you don't like playing them on a touchscreen, and bring them back and preserve these titles for years to come on a cartridge. I mean, that's kind of the other piece of this thing. And there's some games worth preserving.
Yeah.
Some aren't, but some are. I mean, an awful lot of them are. So trying to identify what games those are and find out who made the game, see if they'd be interested in bringing them onto a cartridge. And we can, frankly, produce the cartridges pretty inexpensively these days. So everybody's like, oh, cartridges are going to be so expensive. It's really not. And we saved a ton of money getting all of the Jaguar stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a story in and of itself.
Oh, you touched on something bad. We had a question about. Is there going to be any kind of quality control for the games that get released on this, so we don't end up with like the iTunes store situation?
Oh, of course. I mean, so we think we may have like two levels. I mean, we're going to have games that are more or less published by us, that are promoted by us, sold in our online store. In a sense, almost starting out like Nintendo started out with kind of the seal of approval type system. So the answer is yes. I mean, any games that we're promoting or selling are going to have been played, play tested, and screened by probably some of the best gamers in the business. Cause I mean, we got a lot of them that write for our magazine. We're going to be, tapping into them. We've got Jeremy Parrish and Chris Kohler and Sean and I mean, tons of people have written, we've had tons of great writers for the magazine and are all pretty influential and pretty well respected, journalists and gamers themselves. And a lot of these guys, they're journalists, but I mean, Jeremy's, he's a huge retro gamer and Chris is a huge retro gamer. And so, I think we'll definitely, bring out games that are really good because, I mean, we're just like you. I mean, we don't want to play crap games. Now we may have another level of games where, one thing we'd like to do is kind of open this up to maybe the lower level homebrew kind of folks where it's like, hey, I made this game. It's not the greatest game, but I'm proud of it. I think it's awesome, and I'm going to go to, PAX and have a booth and I want to sell my own game or I'm going to put them on eBay or sell them on my website or give them away to my friends or whatever. So they call us and say, hey, I got this game. I'd like to put it on a cartridge. And then we work with we'll have a development team that'll work with that homebrew developer to get their game onto a cartridge, print their box and their instruction books. And maybe this cartridge will be a different color or something that'll completely set it apart from like, one of our kind of published games. And we kind of open it up that way. I think that would be just really cool for people to just get their games that they made on a cartridge. I mean, we grew up putting games on cassette tapes, and then the cassettes wear out, or your parents throw them out, or whatever. I mean, I think it would be really neat for people that are that make their own games to get them on a cartridge and do what they want with them, sell them for what they want. But we wouldn't sell them or promote them, or they wouldn't be published by us.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we'd like it to be a little bit open source so people can do that. And, I mean, the games that we're going to publish and sell, kind of the officially released games, will certainly be, play tested and screened for sure.
I was curious as to what kind of development platforms he will be supporting. Like, could I make a game in Unity or Cocos 2DX or Game Maker and throw it on the cart?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately, yes, that's what we're steering towards. It's pretty difficult. I mean, one of our challenges is making a system that is accessible by a variety of developers.
Yeah.
You've got kind of the new school Unity, and other, game maker type folks, which, I mean, there's some great retro games coming out on those platforms or those engines. I mean, without a doubt. And, you can output Unity to Android or to the, whatever, to iOS and other consoles and stuff. So we are, working on a plugin for, Unity that, we haven't even started it yet, but I mean, we've talked with Unity and we believe that, via a plugin that developers can get from their, marketplace or store or whatever, we can do that. But the other trick is, to keep this thing accessible to guys using assembly or C++.
Yeah.
Some of the lower level languages too. And one of the reasons we put the FPGA in it is, again, on the homebrew side, you got a lot of guys that are already making games for the SNES or the NES or it's a pretty big hobby market for those types of homebrewers. And there's actually some really good games coming out of those people. And so the FPGA basically will let us hardware emulate any of the old systems that are out there so that if people are making new games for those systems, they can also be put onto our system and hopefully, like I said before, be brought to a bigger audience. But in addition to that, we'll have our own native, engine, basically.
Okay.
Or native specifications. And that's kind of what we're working on, right now. I keep thinking we'll have answers for people here one of these days soon, and it just keeps dragging on and on.
It's a time-consuming process.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it takes a ton of time and a ton of thought. You gotta have really, a really smart team doing something on this. And I think I've got two I don't think, I know I've got two of the best guys in the business working on it. So, it's, when we're done, this thing is going to be a system for the ages. I'm just sure of it. I mean, I just think it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to get one myself and start playing games again. I just, I play a lot of the old systems still, but there's a lot of new games that are coming out that I want to play, but I don't want to, buy a PS4 to download a $10 or $20
I was curious
game.
if the cards that could come in as like one cartridge for all games, or could a developer specify a storage amount to maybe save costs, or if they have really big games, could they get larger amounts?
Yeah, I think it will be. I think some of the price of the cartridges will depend on the size of the game, because we're trying to use like this 100-year flash. I mean, masked ROMs you really can't buy anymore. That's one of the problems. I mean, that was like the ultimate way to do it. But we actually did get in touch with a company up in the Bay Area that's one of the last makers of masked ROMs, and they're actually phasing it out, they've said. And so we're looking at this 100-year flash, because we want these cartridges to last a good long time. There's 10-year flash, but that's not very long, And heck, they may last longer than that, but you don't know. And so it's like, we're trying to put the best flash technology in here that we can, but it does get expensive. You look at a game like Shovel Knight, which I think is like around 200 megs, which is pretty big for a game that looks like Shovel Knight. I mean, it looks spectacular, but I mean, it's an 8-bit game. It's huge. It's a huge game. And so, that particular cartridge may cost a bit more, depending on what the developer wants to do. And we do want to put, the save games on the cartridges, and we don't want password saves and stuff like that. Although, Tiny Knight, I know, John, they were talking about doing a password save on it, but that was it's really up to the developer, if they want to do it that way or whatever. I mean, that's kind of an old school way of doing it. It's kind of cool. It's really up to them, but yeah, so some of the cartridge costs may be determinant on the size of the game that's on them, as well as the license of the game. Games with licenses that people have heard of, which I, hopefully we'll be getting, maybe a little bit more expensive than just a new title from a new developer that nobody's ever heard of, kind of a thing too. So it's going to be kind of a combination of balancing that and kind of working with the developer directly to kind of figure out how we want to price the game. I mean, ultimately it's their game, and so, we just kind of want to work through with them kind of where we think it should be priced at. And a lot of that kind of has to be figured out yet, and kind of that kind of, the system's got to be kind of put into place and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I think, depending on the size of the memory or whatnot, it may be a little bit more expensive.
Okay. Let's get another question. A lot of old cartridges would come with like the Super FX chip and code processors on them. Is that going to be used at all, or is that just kind of unfeasible?
Well, it's a good question. We've been asked it before, and we're not ruling it out. I know John Carlson, one of my hardware guys, would like to be able to do things like that, and even use. I would say that there is a chance for those types of things. Sure.
Okay. If this is successful enough, will this end up being something you could just go into Walmart and find a console?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend on the success of the Kickstarter, and what kind of demand we see during that period, during that campaign time. If it's, we'll probably have a goal similar to Ouya. I mean, a minimum goal of around $1 million to $1.5 million. And if we just barely reach it, or, if we don't reach it, there's, I don't know what our plan B is yet. We may, still try to do this in a different way. But first of all, I think it's going to hit it. But, if we blow by it and pull in the Ouya type numbers, maybe 20, 30, 40,000 people or more, then I think you could see it, on the shelves. I'm not wasting anybody's time at this point talking to retailers. Well, I won't say that. I mean, we're talking to GameStop about the magazine and maybe trying to get it in there, because we don't really think we compete with Game Informer much. And so it has been brought up, and Funstock in the UK wants to carry it. They've already told me they want to be day one. Actually, they're talking about putting up a pre-order, taking pre-orders on the website the day the Kickstarter goes down. And they're, I think, the biggest retailer, certainly the biggest retro gaming retailer in the UK, in Europe. So yeah, so that's really good. And, but yeah, I think again, I'd like that to be the case, but also in this day and age, it may also make sense just to sell it direct via a website and not worry about the wholesale markup, right? And it might,
and inventory and
all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, our whole plan was to sort of flash these games as they're being ordered. So, I mean, we've got a line and we're going to make this in the USA here in Southern California. We're going to do everything under our roof, but essentially flash the games as they get ordered. Print the box, we'll have blanks and then we'll print the labels and the boxes and we'll have some inventory of boxes and instruction books, but as far as the cartridges go, flash them, kind of real time and on demand and not have to have, all of this inventory and, if we sell through retailers, then yeah, I mean, there's going to have to be some inventory. They may have some inventory, but then you get into situations where you got to, I think a lot of times they negotiate buyback, or overage and buybacks, and I don't really want to get into all of that. I just think, if this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and the only place you can get it is on retrovgs.com, people will come here and order it, and I think if we have enough games that are appearing, we'll, have a section like new games, upcoming games, and available date, when will these games be available and on sale dates and take pre-orders and just run everything right off the website. And that way, I mean, again, I think you won't have to charge as much. Gamers won't have to pay as much because you're not paying that, 20-30% retail markup. And so I think it's kind of to everybody's advantage to kind of keep this thing, you won't have that instant gratification really, but I mean, at least in the U.S., if you buy something and, priority mail's like $5-6, you can get it in 2 to 3 days. And a lot of times priority mail's overnight, if you're, depending what zone you're in. It's either 1, 2, or 3 day, which is pretty good and it's pretty inexpensive. And I think gamers will wait that long. I mean, some gamers, they wait. Some gamers have to wait 3 days just to download a game these days. So, I think it'll be okay.
I imagine the on-demand flashing will keep it down the upfront cost for like independent developers. They won't have to put up the capital 5,000-10,000 copies.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely right. And like I said, we're taking care of the manufacturing, and we're probably, the way we've been doing it is a royalty off of the net. So depending on, if it's a $30 game and it costs us $10 to make the cartridge, then we split in some form or fashion the $20 that's left over. And that's kind of been our model that we've had with developers. And so far everybody's like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, and it used to be back in the day, I mean, the developers would put in the order for their games. They'd buy 10,000 of these, and then they'd have to figure out how they're going to sell them and distribute them. And yeah, I mean, all of that'll kind of go away. All we got to get is their game code. We put it on our website. We sell it. We keep track of the games that we're selling and send them reports and pay them once a month, maybe the royalties, and hey, it should be pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah. That sounds like a great system.
Yeah. One thing, I'm sure you'll get this a lot, are y'all actually planning to have like a pack-in game with the console when it releases?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, you got to have a packing game. So right now, our packing game is going to be Tiny Knight from Collector Vision. It's going to be a game heavily based on the Wonder Boy series, which is one of my favorite game series.
Oh yeah,
kind of a platforming RPG, but it's got elements of like Joust, where you get on your wooden horse and you can fly by pressing your A button, and it's just going to have lots of kind of flashbacks to other influences from other old games. So I think it's going to be really neat. And Collector Vision's been making some really great titles lately, and they just had another one funded on a Kickstarter called Sydney Hunter and the Caverns of Death, which we're going to have ported over to this as well. But yeah, that's going to be our first pack-in, and potentially on the Kickstarter, we may have more than one pack-in. I mean, that's going to be the guaranteed pack-in, but what we want to do in the Kickstarter is have, somewhere between 12 and 20, maybe a little bit more, games announced with the Kickstarter, so that people then in different levels of the Kickstarter can pick, choose 2 of the available games, 3 of the available games, 4 of the available games, and add them to their bundle when it delivers, probably a year after that. So, it's going to be kind of a long wait for people, but it's like, you got to go through that, get the pre-orders and start building the systems. We'll ship them in the order that they're purchased. On Kickstarter. When Kickstarter ends, we'll continue to sell the pre-orders, and we'll continue to announce new games. And I think it'll go fast because we'll be updating a lot of people on, here's the games that we're going after. We're, going after these games for launch. And at the same time, hopefully we'll see this market building, and hopefully bigger developers will see this market building over the course of that year and say, okay, yeah, what do we have to lose? Let's dust off some of this old IP that we haven't monetized in the last 20, 25 years, and let's see what happens. The great thing about our system is, generally the games are going to be small, small teams to develop them, smaller budgets, quicker to market, and I just think this is a great, it's an outlet for these games that hasn't existed before. It only makes sense to bring back some of these, 16-bit fan favorite games on a console that's made to play those style games. We know that there's an audience for them, for God's sake. But, it's just going to be convincing, the likes of Sega, Namco, Capcom, Konami, and some of those others that, hey, there is a platform here that's made to play these retro-style games that they ought to be able to make quickly on a small budget and satisfy and make all of these fans happy that have been waiting for some of these games to come out for years and years and years that just have never come out because there's just never really been a platform for it. And a lot of these games they know aren't going to play well on a touchscreen. They've tried it, Sega's brought out some games and they just don't play that great on a touchscreen. And and so, I think it's I think it's going to be a pretty unique platform, and I think it's I just hope gamers think the same way. Like, we need this. The industry needs something like this right now. But only time will tell. Well, what happens, will happen. And, I hope that people get behind it and are excited about it. And, that'll excite the developers. And you'll start seeing games come out for this thing, quite frequently. But, the demand from developers right now has been outstanding. So I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Awesome. I had a question for you. I know, I'm not the only one that's like this, but I'm a very skeptical person, very grizzled and curmudgeonly, I guess you could say. I hate a lot of things in life. Yeah. But I'm pretty well sold on this. The more that I've read on it and putting Lyle's enthusiasm here, I'm going to get me one. If there's one thing you could say to sell other people like me on it, what would that be?
Oh, geez. Well, there's been a lot of crappy products on the market lately. And one of the things that I can say is, again, my whole team are retro gamers, and I've been promoting this hobby, for 10, 12 years now in various ways, and putting my heart and soul into something that is just going to be the coolest product ever. And I don't know. There's a lot to be skeptical about.
It's a tall order.
Yeah, there's a lot to be skeptical about, and I'd be skeptical. I think, we've all been burned so many times, right? And we know that. We know that.
Yeah, that's where the transparency you mentioned earlier really has sold me on. That's because it doesn't seem like a cash grab.
Yeah. You could say, they're just going after the nostalgia or whatever, but it happens to be that's what it is, but it's because the nostalgia is good. These games are good, and there's developers making tons of these great games now, and let's give them the system to bring them out on that'll preserve them and kind of, make their dream come true, is having a game that's on a cartridge that they can show their grandkids 20 years from now or 30 years from now. I would just say that, we've got a great team of industry, kind of icons working on this. I've talked to John and Brenda Romero. I've talked to Michael Katz. He's on our industry advisory board. He led Sega in the Genesis days. I'm talking to Howard Phillips. We're trying to learn from the successful consoles in the past, and using our contact base to learn as much as we can about what we're doing, and trying to get a lot of industry folks behind this to make sure that it's a success. I just think I think the team that we've got is as good a team as you're going to get to bring out a product like this. I think, since we got the Jaguar molds, it's made this thing affordable for us to do it, right out of the gates. Without those, this wouldn't be happening. So you can all thank the Atari Jaguar for this, if you like this idea. Whether you like the Jag or not, or whatever, without it, at least for me personally to be doing this venture, I wouldn't be doing it.
I'm a big fan of the way that the Jag looks. It looks really sleek and ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Way better as a console than a dental
Right.
product.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. I went up there in December and met with Steve at Imagine Systems and looked at these molds and looked at the tooling and, was at his place. And, he was really, he was really drawn to the design of it. And that's why he bought it for his, the dental equipment. He appreciates a good design. And it was just a really neat story to kind of hear how he learned about the Jaguar. We kind of talk about it a little bit there's a video that we run on our Facebook page that might be buried on there now, but I think if you click on photos or videos, you should be able to see it. When I went up there and we interviewed him and it was just a fascinating story. And it's just so cool that this tooling lasted all of these years. It lasted for a reason, I think. It was never destroyed or recycled or lost to time. It was maintained and kept in really great condition. And we sold a ton of translucent ones when I took delivery of them down here in Orange County. We had to test the tooling to see if it still worked. This was after I already paid for it. And so we had to test it, and they were charging me to set up each tool into the injection mold machines, and we offset the cost of that by selling translucent Jaguar cases to Jaguar collectors, and sold quite a few thousands of dollars already. These molds, the tooling's already paid for themselves.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm a machinist by trade, and I've made some molds and stuff like that. I can tell you that's a really expensive piece of equipment to get. So
well,
that's great. That's already paid for and done.
Yeah. And Atari had a backup tool that was never used, that we've got, and they're in great shape. They're putting out great products, and it's just pretty amazing. I got all the D-size prints with that when I bought them from Atari, the big blueprints of the Jaguar.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really neat experience. So it's really cool to think that we have that tooling that made all of those Jags back in the day, and all of the cartridges. It's just crazy. It's great. And the injection mold shop that I brought them to, they told me that if I were to just have that tooling built in today's, today, it would have been a good $300,000, $250,000 to $300,000. And that doesn't even include the design. The designers you'd have to pay to come up with a system. I think Ouya, when they got started, I think they had a few $1 million invested in them beforehand, venture capital or whatever, even before they did the Kickstarter. And a lot of that money went to the development. They paid this, highfalutin design team from San Francisco to design the thing and design the controller. And we kind of all know how that went, but I think a lot of that money was spent on that. And then there's system and infrastructure, things that we don't have to really worry about because we're not online. So we're not
things I was
we're not fraught
really
with a lot of the problems they had. I don't think so. They kind of failed, there was people that loved the Ouya. It's for emulation or whatnot, it's great, but frankly mine, I was never able to update. It would time out. Every time I turned it on, I'd try to do an update, and I'd literally sit there for hours, and then the thing would just time out. And I haven't played it in well over a year because I can't even get the thing to turn on anymore. So, we don't want that. Like, if you turn on our system in 20 years, there's no server to ping. That's some server that's dead and gone. Everybody's like, why doesn't it go online? It's got to go online. No, it doesn't. Because how are you going to play, when you plug this thing in 20 years, what's it going to do? It's going to look for a server that ain't there. And we don't want that. Who wants that? So, I think retro gamers appreciate that. I think today's gamers don't understand that, but if they thought about it for a minute, it'd be like, okay, yeah, I don't think, you're not going to be plugging in your Xbox, 360 or your Xbox One in 20, 25 years and playing anything on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be an obsolete brick.
It's going to be a brick.
Decorative purposes only.
Yeah.
It's going to be a brick.
That brings me brings me to the question I have. Since there's not going to be any way to, I guess, maintenance this thing online, is there going to be any kind of warranty with the system in case something's wrong?
Yeah. I mean, everything's got to have at least a year warranty, probably, right? So yeah, we'll have some sort of a warranty on it, and probably some sort of a system where if there is something wrong with it, we'll swap it out or something, and maybe we'll go longer than a year or something. I'm pretty confident. I know it's easy to say now because we haven't even started building the thing yet, but the guys on my team, they
know what they're
doing. Hardcore, anal. They don't want this thing to be a brick. They don't want this thing to. Again, the Genesis, the Atari, and all that stuff works today. And they want to make sure that this is, certainly as reliable as any of those old types of systems. And frankly, it should be more reliable at this point, just with technology and everything. But sometimes technology, doesn't always necessarily mean longer life, as we all know. So, but it's a top priority to make this thing, perfect day one. And it's going to be thoroughly tested. That's we're not going to start the Kickstarter till we got a proof of concept and a prototype that we can actually plug a game into and play it. So, I'm hoping that will be this summer. That's what I've been telling everybody for months, but it's going to get done when it gets done.
You can't rush something like this at all.
No, and so, we're trying to buy people's times, showing some of the specialty Kickstarter colors that we're going to come out with, and people are really excited by those. And, we've kind of been talking about the controller just recently. We've been kind of showing off
the
controller. So, we're pretty much set on this and working with Interworks Unlimited. They're going to kind of make a new USB version of the Pro U controller. A lot of people had issues with this thing, mainly connectability issues. But we've heard some people complaining about the D-pad and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, it feels like a great controller. Which I know that's not everything, but that's a lot of these controllers these days are just crappy, cheap feeling. This thing really has got a nice, high quality feel to it. So, but we're going to test the heck out of these things. And if we find any issues with them, they won't go in our box. But I love the design of it. It's weird because even before I knew of this thing, I thought. We were talking to lots of developers, even old school developers, and they're like, we really want to have analog sticks. So a lot of people are saying, well, that's not really retro to have analog sticks. Well, it would have been great to have analog sticks back in the day. That is an improvement.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree with
you.
you.
There's a lot of retro games that play great, that could play great with those. And, so this has got the dual analog sticks, plus it's got the, SNES style gamepad in there. So you get a little bit of both, kind of old school and new school on it. And, it'll be USB, and, wired controllers generally, you don't have the lag and stuff like that. And retro games require a certain amount of precision. And so, we hope that by, using this controller, we'll get that. But we're going to be testing the heck out of it. But for right now, again, it's saving us a ton of money to use something that's existing, just with some slight branding and some modifications to it. But again, it's just, it's not like we're trying to do things on the cheap, but we're just trying to be smart about it. And it's like, why reinvent the wheel?
You got to be economic in it, or it won't happen.
Yeah, and this way too with USB. Anybody, if you don't like our controller, there's tons of other USB controllers on the market that you can use, or other USB devices that developers can work with. Whether it's keyboards or a mouse or. Whatever.
I meant to ask you about that. Could you just plug like a wired Xbox controller into it and run it?
Well, we're saying anything that will fit into the anything that's USB or anything that's a 9-pin, because we're putting at least at this point, I think we're putting 2 9-pin connectors on it as well.
Yeah, I was really excited about that.
Yeah, there's adapters though from USB to 9-pin, but we don't want somebody to have to buy something else. It's like when you get it out of the box, you want everything in there that you can play it on, and maybe you do have some old controllers at home that you want to plug in, from your Sega, Genesis, or Atari, or whatever. So we're just trying to make it about as flexible as we can for gamers, for developers. It's going to be an exciting product, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for it so far.
Oh, most definitely. It's when I first read about it, it's definitely one of the more exciting things I'd come across. I just was freaking pumped about.
Yeah,
most definitely.
Yeah, well, that's great.
I know there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot that goes into it, but do you have a roundabout idea where we might see the Kickstarter begin?
Oh, I don't. Like I said, I've been telling everybody summer, July, August. I think at one point I was telling people June, which obviously isn't going to happen. The hardware is just taking us a good amount of time. I mean, it really, really is. And I mean, it's just, we've been going back and forth on lots of different things. And, I think we're to the point now where we've about got a bill of materials locked down. And we're going to start, shopping it around to a few different suppliers and to just see what happens. And I'm hopefully within the next 2 weeks or so, we'll be buying parts and building a board. That's really the plan. I mean, we really need to get a board pretty much built by the end of this month. Well, or by the end of like the first week of July. So, it's probably, Kickstarter is probably not going to be July. Hopefully it'll be August. I'd like to start it, right, like August 1st or the first, early August. But it could be end August, September. I mean, like I said, it's really going to depend when, we're trying to balance price with capability right now. I mean, it's like, we can make this thing do a lot of cool things, but I mean, the thing may be $350. So the question is, okay, that's maybe going to be too much to play retro games. So, okay, what do we start taking out of it? And everything that we're taking out of it is like, oh man, this would be so great to have this in. People would love this. It would give the developers so much, they can do for years and years and years. And so, so again, I don't know. Early on, I told people, 150 to 180 was where I wanted to price this thing. But that was really in the early days before we started just, going with the FPGA route, which is a very expensive option. But with it, it would make this thing a time machine. I mean, it would be, it would literally be able to hardware replicate any system that came before it. It will allow developers to make their own cores and create their own, proprietary core that they use to make games with on this thing. It would give developers almost like infinite game making capability on this thing. It would be so awesome, but it comes with a price. And the question is that price, will people be willing to pay that price? And I don't know, we're struggling right now to keep this thing below 250. But only because what's in it is unbelievably awesome. I mean, it's like I said, it's almost a next gen system. I mean, as far as, solid state systems go with no moving parts, this thing is going to be about as next gen as you're going to ever be able to get. And, it's just going to depend on, it's going to price out where it prices out at. And we're just going to have to do a hell of a sales job. And hey, I mean, if this thing had Phantasy Star coming out on it, new Ghosts and Goblins, people would pay anything we'd want for this thing. So really a lot of it comes down to the games as well. It's like, okay, maybe, we'll pay, almost next gen type money for this thing if I know it's going to play Mighty Number 9, or it's going to play, this new Castlevania game that's coming out, or, the new, Toe Jam and Earl, or the new Ukulele from the Banjo-Kazooie guys. I mean, if this thing was able to play those style games, hey, on cartridges, I mean, I'd drop $500 for a system that did that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I think a lot of it's just going to be a balancing act on capability. So we don't want to take stuff out of it that gamers are going to ultimately love, and it's going to build longevity into this thing. I mean, this is literally going to be a system that you're going to be able to play like in your 20s and in your 50s, or your 30s and your 70s, or whatever. I mean, and
so it'll literally be retro one day.
Yeah, that'd be really weird, but I don't know. It's just so we're really kind of playing mind games with ourselves right now, trying to figure out what we need to put in this, what are needs and what are wants. And trying to just but everybody else has got their own needs and their own wants, and some people can afford to pay, $250, $300 for this. Some people can't, and so, it's just going to be, I don't know. I don't know. It's a very tough. It's tough to make a retro system in the modern age. And it's not cheap. I mean, Retron 5s are selling for $200 or more these days.
Oh yeah,
just
to play existing stuff.
Yeah,
yeah. So, I look at that and I go, and they're selling out of those left and right. But hey, they got a huge catalog of games. You can play your old games on them on high def. It's great. But
it just sounds so much nicer being able to purchase new games.
Yeah.
So then, going back and digging out your old catalog.
Yeah. Well, I play all that old stuff on the original stuff anyway. That's why I haven't bought a Retron 5, because I got a TV with every one of those things plugged into it right now. And there's no better way to play. I mean, those are still emulated. So, I mean, there's no better way to play the original games than on original hardware. And again, that's what we want to do. We want people to be able to play these original games that they love today on original hardware 10, 20, 30 years on the road. And there's no other way you're going to be able to do it than with this system. I mean, that's the line right there. I mean, it's just, you're not going to be able to do it. So, at least for retro gamers, we'll be able to do that. AAA gamers, not so much.
Yeah, I think this is finally going to turn me from a PC-only gamer to a PC console gamer again.
Well, I mean, at least, PC gamers, you guys are kind of used to, playing your games, streaming them or downloading them and not having to, I mean, that's kind of been that way for years. And I mean, there's lots of great, retro games on Steam and good old games and everything else. It's great, but it's still nice to have the cartridge and collect something and show it off. And I mean, I've said it in other interviews. I mean, what are kids these days going to have on their walls 20 years from now? Nothing.
Exactly.
I mean, it's maybe they don't care. They didn't have it anyway, so whatever. But I talk to a lot of young kids, and they're collecting old games, and just like a lot of us old collectors are. I mean, they're in their mid to late teens, and they're collecting old games.
Yeah,
because
that's a lot of my favorite part of it. It's the actual collecting and thrill of the hunt kind of deal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think I might have to put my first cartridge in a really dusty area just so I can blow it off as soon as I can.
Yeah,
just to get that thing back.
Yeah. We're gonna do cool stuff with the cartridges too. I think we're gonna the first 500 that we make or 1,000 of every game that we make may be a special color. We may just randomly insert them into boxes and send them out, and just people will open up their box and get one of the translucent green, one of 500 cartridges or something.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I know. Just so they don't even know they're getting it. The boxes all look the same, and you put them out in different distribution areas, and it's just people opens it up like, oh, I got one of the first 500. It's just going to be fun. We can do all sorts of really fun things. I think that'll kind of excite the collector and kind of bring that collectability back in some form or fashion.
Well, Mike, we're about running out of time on our end.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. And
oh man, thank you for taking the time to come on with us. Definitely.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on. Maybe when we got a little bit more to tell. And
Oh yeah, we'd love to do an update.
Yeah, I know a lot of our listeners are really curious about this. They're going to love this.
Yeah, we got a bunch of our friends. They own a local game store to us here.
Yeah.
We've been spreading the word from what we hear from
Great.
y'all as soon as we get it.
Yeah, well, hopefully people will start, climbing on board. We're really going to need everybody's support to show, because I really want the big developers to see that there's a market here, so they'll bring back some of these great old titles. I mean, I'm just dreaming about that. And, a lot of these companies have disappeared or their IPs have been bought. I just saw that Arc System Works bought, or now has all the techno stuff. That's pretty neat. And then, what was the other one I just posted? Oh, Data East. Their whole back catalog has now been purchased just this year it's changed hands twice now. And I mean, just think of all the old Data East titles that were out there.
I'd love to
Joe
play
and Mac,
some
man.
Bad Dudes.
Joe and
I'd love.
Karnov.
Yeah, could you imagine just figuring out, kind of bringing back the original development team if they're still around, and just making another sequel to Joe and Mac? I mean, that would be great. I love that game, that franchise. It's only a couple of games in it. We need more. Oh
yeah, definitely. We need a whole slew of them.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, so let me know when your podcast goes live, and we'll promote you guys, and love to come back on in the future.
I definitely will love to have you back, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, man.
Yep, see ya.